Hi there, and welcome to Draw With Me. Particularly those of you who are Crime Stoppers who helped us to catch some notorious criminals last week when we did an interesting exercise in being police. What are they called? Police sketch artists? Yeah, I guess that's what it is. So that's what we did last week. And as you saw, there were some interesting, dramatic, and surprising drawings. Today we're going to do something equally interesting and dramatic, I imagine. So thanks for joining me here. And hello to everybody here. Hello to Thistle and Celeste and CW and everybody who is joining me here to draw with me. That's what we do every Thursday at noon here on YouTube, on Facebook, across the world, across the internet. And we do, different kinds of things, as you saw. Last week it was criminals. This week it's going to be writing. Writing, you say? I thought this was called Draw With Me. We'll get to that, and I'll explain in time. So, Rosalie, welcome from Australia. Magdalena. It's so nice to see you all here. So good. I hope you've been having a good week. I hope you've had a chance to do some drawing. I've been pretty busy doing stuff, and my studio is actually like a mess. You can't really tell. It's one of the beauties of having a camera that throws the background out of focus, is you can't see piles of detritus and messiness. But that's all good. I remember a long time ago working with a film editor, and the editor in the next office had a sign that said, "A neat stall is the sign of a dead horse." And I always remember that. A neat stall is the sign of a dead horse. Ironically, this editor, who kept a very, very tidy office, seemed to have missed the point of what that implied. So Thistle, participating in Inktober. Yeah, well, good. Today we'll count towards that, because you could be using ink today. I mean, I feel like I'm living through, every month is Inktober, if you like. I love ink. I love splashing around in it. I love it in pens. And today I'm going to be using it in bottles. Some nice Winsor and Newton calligraphic ink. Maybe some drawing ink will come into play too. We'll see. So yes, a messy desk denotes a genius. Yeah. I think it's just evidence of industry, as they say. So that's what we want. We want to appear busy. And I think having your stuff out is important. Putting all your stuff away neatly into boxes and hiding it and having very organized stuff is helpful when you're trying to look for things, definitely. But a lot of artists I know are really super messy. So we'll see. Okay, so let's kind of get into it. I wanted to talk to you about writing as part of our sketchbook practice, because writing and journaling and note-taking and that is all, to me, an essential part of this process of making a sketchbook into a regular part of your regular life. A sketchbook is not just a place to do sketches that you will then use to, go on and make some real art. I believe that a sketchbook is a tool in and of itself. It is an end in and of itself. And the more you can incorporate it into your daily life, the more drawing becomes part of your regular habit. And the more that happens, the better your drawings become. The more controlled you are, the more expressive you are of your sort of inner core being. The more authentic your drawings become, because they become an extension of you. So drawing isn't a thing that you sit down and do, occasionally when you're taking a class. Drawing is something that you do all the time. It's like breathing. It's just part of your natural state. And when you incorporate writing into it, it makes the whole experience richer and deeper. Now, a lot of times I will see people do beautiful drawings, beautiful, in their sketchbooks, and they'll send me photos of their pages, as you see here at the beginning of Draw With Me. But then they will write next to the drawing. They'll write something down, and they'll do it hastily. So they'll put all this care and thought into their drawing, and then they will write something that they didn't think about the aesthetics of their writing. And that's what I want to talk about, is how can writing be aesthetic? You might be saying, I have lousy handwriting, and I can only imagine that that's what you're thinking. My handwriting is bad. It always turns out awful. That's because what I'm discussing is different from handwriting. This is not about making a laundry list, or a shopping list, or scrolling a note next during a phone call. This is about thinking of your writing as if it was an extension of drawing, and that the writing itself can be the style, the nature of the writing, the placement of the writing, the size of the writing, can all be expressive elements in your sketchbook pages. And that may be an alien concept to you. You might say, well, I'm not a calligrapher. I've never taken classes in lettering. Guess what? I'm not a calligrapher, and I've never taken classes in lettering, but I still believe this to be true. So I want to show you some examples of some artists whose work I admire and who I think are doing what I'm talking about. So, so here we have, this is actually an artist who I'd recently discovered. Well, I didn't discover, she's been around, but her name is Jo Brown, and she did this beautiful nature diary. But in this case, her writing is very neat. It is regular. It is, she's drawing and writing actually on lined paper in her sketchbook. But when you look at this, you can see that the writing is part of the design of the page. And you can see how she breaks the writing, as you can see around the antennas of this butterfly. You can see how it is perfectly balanced, the spacing between the lines. She's thought it through. She's had made creative decisions as she's working on this. This is Dan Price, one of my sketchbook mentors, and his writing is, it looks almost childlike. It's very simple, but again, it's thought through. It is interacting with the drawings. It is regular. It is a graphic element, and that's what you want to think about your writing as being another graphic element on the page. And it can be really useful that way, because you might have a blank space and you might think, should I do another drawing there? Should I leave it blank? Or might you put in a block of writing? And when you put in a block of writing, it balances out the composition, but it's also airy. It's airier perhaps than, say, a block of color would be. You can also take things from books and books design that you've seen, like initial caps. You can see at the beginning of each paragraph, he has a larger letter. You can see he has a header where it says drawing stuff. Big headers. It's less important what the writing is actually saying than how it is looking on the page. This is Hannah Hinkman, and she writes in lots of different styles, but as you can see, her drawing is just a beautiful graphic element, and you can see where the line breaks are, what the curve of the line is. This is a designer whose name is Nate Williams. I'm sorry, this is Carolyn Sewell. So this is much more calligraphic. She's actually a lettering artist, but you can see again how she's thinking about the energy of these letters, how they're wrapping around. Again, they're saying something. They have content in them, right? They're communicating an idea, but they're also, the style of the writing and the quality of the line is also expressing an idea. And that's an important thing to think about. This is very straightforward. This is a guy named Bill Brown who does a zine called Dream Whip, which I recommend to you. It's really fun, interesting, very simple kind of zine that he's been publishing for 20 years probably. But look again at his writing. It's so regular. The spacing between the lines. It is purposeful. It is also authentic. That's another thing to think about. is your lines, your lettering are going to be an extension of who you are. Thistle is saying, I always have a hard time figuring out what to write. That is a practice that you have to get into, which is to say, what's on my mind as I'm doing this drawing? Or is there information that I want to add to the drawing? Is there a piece of poetry that I want to add in here? Again, thinking about the lettering and the words as an important element in the communication. I mean, look at how beautiful it can be. It can be completely, in this case, overwhelmed by the execution, so you can barely read it, but it does say, let's do something impossible. But this is, again, lettering as a graphic element. Perhaps you've seen this beautiful book that Charlie McKeesy's done about a horse and a boy and a what is it, a mole? Yeah. But his lettering, and look at how his lettering and his drawing are the same, right? This is a really great example of how the quality of the lines, the thickness and the thinness, the strokes, it's the same. They're an extension of it. His drawing and his writing are united. So again, if you can draw like this, you can write like this. It just takes some intention to do that. And again, how beautiful and expressive it is. The drawings have that emotion, but so of course do the words themselves, but then also the style of the words. Like that lettering is evocative of something, right? It feels like, I don't know, maybe it's a different time, maybe it's very personal. All these things come through from the quality of the lettering. You know, this is a designer who has done a whole book of different kinds of lettering that I found quite interesting and expressive. She's done, in this case, it is on chalkboard. What is her name? Oh, Debbie Millman. Sorry, Debbie Millman. Yeah. So she's done things on different surfaces, and this is, I think, just shows her variety, which is really interesting. And this is, I think, her most natural lettering that she does. This is like kind of her handwriting. But look at how beautiful this is. How the flow, the different sizes of each line, but each line is kind of consistently the same size. There's also some of the letters look like cursive, some of them look like printing, some are uppercase, some are lowercase. There are spaces between the lines themselves, have different spaces and different curves to them. So again, it feels really expressive. You look at this, it feels like drawing. These letters feel like drawing. This is Sabrina Ward Harrison, who is basically a mixed media artist and a journaler. And her, again, really expressive. The feeling of what she's saying. You can look at this and know what it says without reading it. You can feel it. You can just and the way that it interacts with the background elements, with the colors and the brush strokes. And then I guess it's like pastels and gouache on all different kinds of textures that she's using in the background. But again, these letters are really flowing and talking about who she is. Here again, she also does this interesting thing with underlining at certain times, but she's underlining in afterwards. You can see she wrote it and then she went back in, or maybe she drew those lines first, but the lines are in pencil, the words are in ink. They're in boxes. She'll put boxes around certain things. She'll emphasize certain things. And then her little drawings at the bottom, they feel like the lettering. So it's all interacting. This is also Hannah Hinkman. And here again, you'll see this with nature journalers. We've seen it with John Muir Laws, that he's putting in notes to add the things that he's observing, or in this case, that she's observing about the frog, she's writing down. But when she writes it down, it is part of the aesthetic. Her lettering there is a style to the lettering that connects with the drawing itself. It doesn't look like she wrote it, like scrolled it with a ballpoint pen after doing a beautiful drawing of a frog. It is integral, and to me, far more interesting than just seeing the drawing by itself. I think it makes it much richer. This is a designer named Nate Williams, and again, you can see his letters and his drawings they're interacting with each other, overlapping. but there's also connections between the colors so that it all feels integrated, it all feels part of the same thing. Here we see Sarah Midda, and she's labeling these different fruits. She's, in this case, I think she is probably writing with a dip pen in colored ink. She's probably also drawing in colored ink or drawing in watercolor. You can also write in watercolor just as you draw in watercolor. It is a fine choice. And her handwriting varies. I mean, this is so beautiful, this italics that she's done here. So delicate and small. And but again, evocative of the whole thing. These drawings of these mesclun leaves are beautiful, but once she's added this lettering and labeling, it just goes to the next level. That's Bill Brown again. This is Carrie Smith, who has become super famous now with that series of books that she did about journaling. But I love this. This is basically probably done in the computer afterwards, but so she's reversed it. But you could absolutely do this writing on a photograph, print out a Xeroxed photo, paste it into your journal, write on it with a white gel pen or something. And again, combination of very regular uppercase letters, and then the way that she's doing her headlines, outlining them, really nice. This is James Jean. And here you see writing that's illegible. You know, it reminds you of Leonardo da Vinci's sketchbooks. His codexes, all this writing, you can't even tell what it says. But this drawing is, to me, this page is enhanced a huge amount by having this block of lettering in there. It's just beautiful to look at, and it ties the whole page together. And here we see Linda Barry, who uses lettering. She's a cartoonist, so a lot of her lettering feels like the sort of lettering you'd see in bubbles in a cartoon, very regular. But again, look at the energy that all this lettering has, that she's colored in letters with painted in that word homework, and there's just energy to the placement of it. It's all tying it together. It feels like notes. It looks really interesting. Again, this is not fancy calligraphy. You absolutely could write like this, but just doing it in a conscious way with a plan for how your lettering is going to do it. And when I say plan, I don't mean that you have to have a composition and a layout to do it in advance. It means that you're thinking about the placement of it. You're thinking about how much are you going to write. That's another issue. You might say to yourself, well, I don't know. How am I going to know? What if I run out of space? You're thinking about that as you're writing. It becomes a skill where you say, okay, I'm going to have to wrap this up in the next 2 lines, so I better think about what I'm writing. And this is another page from Hannah Hinkman, another style of lettering that she does. Beautiful. I love how compressed these letters are, and they are interconnecting with each other. You almost don't need to read it again. It's just there's something very expressive in the letters. This is Mike Lowry. Again, a lot of what he does is influenced by cartoons. He's a children's book illustrator. This is a page from his travel journal, and you can see drawing inside of little boxes. Notice how he uses uppercase, but then he'll choose certain words. He'll go down into cursive, or he'll use letters that are lowercase. Really in different type sizes, putting in silhouettes, putting in drop shadows. He's a designer, so he thinks in these terms, but these are really great. And this is, again, this is just a page in his sketchbook. But look at all the different things that he's doing. Look at how some words are circled, how some words are underlined, look at the word stalked, how you see how he's put little serifs on all the letters. He's even put a serif on the O, because everything he does is hilarious. But look at the O's in Puerto Rico at the top. They have like little tiny horns or embellishments that come out of them. It just makes it a little bit more interesting. Again, you don't need to be a calligrapher to do this kind of thing. You just need to think about it. And this is also everything that we've seen, it's so different, right? And each different artists. They're all different ways of expressing themselves. It isn't that you have to pick a way of doing it, and it doesn't mean that you have to pick away from that somebody else is doing it. Do it your own way. Here's Felix Scheinberger. I love the way Felix will go over certain letters and make them thicker. I think that I've copied him sometimes because I just think there's something so interesting about that. Like, why does he do it? I've asked him about it. Doesn't really have an answer, but it gives an energy to those lines of lettering. By having the heavier, random things in there, it makes it feel more energetic. And if you look down at the little drawing of the mountain in the corner, you can see he's doing that same kind of thing with his drawing. So the way that he's emphasizing the shadows in that mountain, and he's varying his line stroke, and he's doing the same thing in his lettering. So yes, painted with schnapps. That's why you can see all the things. So, all right. So that's sort of what I've been thinking about is when we do lettering, A, writing matters. B, think about it. C, be expressive. D, assume that it's going to take a little bit of work to get to. Just like your drawing has taken some time, you're not instantly going to do this. E, it doesn't really matter if your handwriting sucks. The reason your handwriting sucks is because you probably don't write that much now, because we're always on our phones typing. But also your writing may have always been bad, but you need to have the same attitude towards your writing as you have to your drawing. And what are the key things when it comes to drawing? You need to slow down. You need to think. You need to know your tools. Over time, you will become more effortless. Over time, it will flow. So when you see me do it, I do this quite a lot. So I'm pretty expressive about it. I don't put a huge amount of thought into what I'm doing, but I do try and think about these things in general when I'm doing lettering. So I'm going to be using this Hahnemühle hand lettering paper. I gotta say, this is really nice. I even really like this cover that they have. But this comes in different sizes, but it says here suitable for brush, pen, pencil, and fine liner. Should there be a comma there? Brush, comma, pen, but it also works for brush pen. So anyway, so this is the paper I'm going to be using. You can use whatever you like, but let us do something. What are we going to do? So yes, I see in the chat that you guys have been talking about quotes. Quotes are certainly an easy thing to do. Quotes are sort of interesting because they're neutral, right? So when we think about a quote, we say, well, I'm going to allow somebody else to speak for me. So if you're reading a book and you find an interesting quote, you go, you know what, this really kind of captures how I'm feeling. Let me put it in there. But what I would ask you to do when you think about putting in quotes, or putting in anything that you've borrowed from somebody else, is make sure that it feels authentic, that it feels reflective of who you are. It's not just sort of a generic kind of quote. But today, actually, we're going to do something relatively generic just because we're all working on this together. But I think when you're working on your own thing, try, if you're reading a book and you want to put a quote down from the book and then maybe write something else or draw something else that maybe is relevant because it's something that's occurring to you at this moment. Maybe it's relevant to the thing that you've just read and written down. All different kinds of things. But I think also, to me, the most interesting use of this is when you are using writing the same way you use drawing to record your life. So let me just think about it. Do I have an example here? I'm doing all this blathering. I don't have a handy sketchbook right here. Well, maybe this one. So let me switch cameras for 1 second. So like this is big, but this is my thing of this pomegranate. I did this gouache painting of this pomegranate. I drew the tree that grows in our backyard. I wrote a block of copy about it. I did some little highlights, and I wrote this big word "palm" at the top. Or here I drew my son's. Let me get a bigger picture here. So here I did a drawing of my son's van. I wrote the word van, and I wrote a block of copy that has something to do with it. Here's a quote. We have 2 lives. The second begins when we realize we only have one. So I wrote that quote down because I was thinking about the second life that I was having right now, thanks to the pandemic, thanks to moving to Phoenix. So again, make all that stuff, make it relevant, not just decorative. But so all right. So let's go. Let's start working. Let's get to work. It is we are. That's not what I want to do. Okay. So before I pulled a couple little quotes, just because they're sort of generic, I thought it might be interesting. There's this one from Benjamin Franklin: either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. And a quote from Peter DeVries: I only write when I'm inspired, so I see to it that I'm inspired every morning at 9 o'clock. So, you might decide, and I want to do a little bit of piece of lettering, and I want to just have it sitting there by my desk as a reminder or something, So in that case, we are, we're making an object out of calligraphy. That's what I'm probably going to do today. But that's a bit different than keeping a sketchbook and writing in your sketchbook. But the practice is the same. So what do you think? I think maybe I'll do the Peter DeVries one. I'll hang that by my desk. So I'm going to be using this Winsor and Newton ink, and I'm using my G-nib, my zebra G-nib. And, let's just think about how do I want to approach this. So I'm not going to think a huge amount about it because I don't want to do this differently than I normally do. But, you can spend a fair amount of time. You could, sketch this whole thing out in pencil. But I don't. And you might say, but how am I really going to think about it? How am I going to plan this out? How am I going to know how it fits on the page? I don't. I have no idea what this is going to be like. So I'm going to start with a couple quotation marks. And then I'm going to just and you'll see me on this journey making some errors, making some new choices as I go. But that's in part because I tend not to make big plans when I do lettering. I just kind of make it up as I go. But I like to have fun. Like here, I'm going to cross these serifs. I'm going to bring this thing down underneath, and I'm going to bring it back up, and I'm going to connect it there. So to me, each one of these letter forms is an opportunity just to kind of make cool shapes and play around. So I do most of my lettering with a dip pen. I just like this. I like the expressive nature of the line. Of course, if I don't have a dip pen with me, I'll write with anything. But a lot of times I later on regret not taking the time to do it with a pen. Because what I like about the dip pen so much is how varied the lines are. Okay, I think I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch to a different colored ink here. I am. So I'm switching here to red ink. Red. Let me move this whole thing over. Patting my head and rubbing my belly at the same time. Sorry, I'm stopping talking because a lot of times I find if I'm talking while I'm writing, guess what? I leave out words or I add weird words. It's not easy to do both at the same time. Right. Now I'm going to go back to black. Back to black. You know what? I think I'm going to put in this comma in black too. You know, I mean, there are a few things that you can do to inspire your lettering. One, of course, is to look at people who do this kind of thing and just copy them. Copy them so you're internalizing their influence. And then you will have that in the soup of your creative toolkit. Soup of your creative toolkit, yes. I'm talking, I'm thinking, I'm writing, and I'm trying to make sure I don't screw up this quote. And so that's one thing you can do is just like look at artists who do this kind of thing, and just say, okay, that's good. I like the way they do that, and I'm going to try and just copy some of their letters. Another thing is to look at magazines. Look at things that use typography in interesting ways, at the way that they design pages. Look at interesting books and just copy some of the layouts. So you can take a layout design and break it down into the elements. You can reduce it to a bunch of boxes and go, okay, it's a big box, it's balanced by a small box, it's got a little color here, all those kinds of things. You can just copy that structure and make it your own. Put your own elements into those boxes and just see how that works out for you. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is not copy other people, of course. You're trying to find your way. And sometimes finding your way is a matter of trying on what other people do. And that's something that we did as teenagers in our lives, right? You might do your hair like a certain like movie star you liked, or wear the same kind of clothes that a popular kid in your school wore, or, you know, learn to do something that your older sister does. So those are all things that we pick up as we're developing as people. We pick up stuff from other people. But then ultimately, of course, you become you. You know, those things will blend into you. And the same is true of you in your art life. Because in some ways, you're building a new person, right? A person that relates to you, but, you know, you want to see, like, what is it possible to do? Oh, I never even thought of doing that. And so you try it out. You go, yeah, that's not for me. Or you might say, I like that, but I wish it was like this. Okay, good. I didn't screw it up. Do you know who Peter de Vries was? Peter de Vries was a novelist. Died about 20 years ago. I remember my parents were really into Peter de Vries when I was probably in high school. I read a couple of his books. They were pretty funny. He sort of wrote books about sort of sex comedies among people in suburbs and academia, I think. I don't know. Maybe we'll go back and look at him again. He's called Vries. VR. Okay. I think this is an interesting quote, though. I mean, obviously it's a joke, but I think it is interesting, this idea of inspiration. You know, not inspired. It's just not something I really think about that much anymore. Sometimes I get inspired, but I don't really go out to look to be inspired. I think I can make stuff just because I say I've got to sit down and make something, you know? I'm going to fill in, there's a couple spots in here that I don't really like the blankness of. So I'm just going to put in a little flower or something. Yeah, so I think so much of it comes down to habit, showing up and trying it. Might suck, doesn't matter. I've been thinking about that so much recently, how, the importance of showing up, and how if only we could say to ourselves, am I missing an it? I only write when I'm inspired, so I see to, oh my God, you're right, I did. So I'm going to put that in, fortunately. You wouldn't even know. See, no matter how, because I was talking. Yeah, so I left that little spot there. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the idea that it is in so many ways more important to make anything on a regular basis than it is to necessarily make something good periodically. Hey, look, it fits perfectly in that window. What incredible design. So, yes. All right, you're all troubled by the missing it, I'm sure. But yeah, so the idea of making things, even if they're bad, is just, I don't know that you're buying that. I don't know that you believe me when I say that. But it's true. I make a lot of crap. crap. I leave out a lot of words. Do a lot of things that are not what I set out to do. But it's okay. Because each of those bad things it's like having a bad workout or going for a bad run, where you didn't quite make the time that you wanted to, or you didn't feel great when you did it. But it's like my wife was saying to me yesterday, we went to a yoga class, and she said, I always hate it when I go, but I'm always glad when I went. And, I think the same is true of making art is, can you congratulate yourself for showing up? Can you say, my goal was just to do it, and it wasn't necessarily to do something great? I mean, it's funny. I haven't been working in my sketchbook that much. I've been mainly working on pieces of paper like this, and I've filled a giant double thickness drawer with all these just pages that I just throw in there. I haven't even looked through them for ages. There's all kinds of stuff in there. And a lot of times my sketchbook can feel that way too. Just like make it and then turn the page. And a lot of times it's a disaster and you feel like you've failed to accomplish the thing you want to accomplish. And then a month or two later you go back, or years later you go back, and you don't even remember that it wasn't what you set out to do. And you go, that's still pretty good. Still pretty good. I still like that. Or that was interesting. Or later on I did a different version of that. So yeah. There's all kinds of things that go on in your process that you can't anticipate, and that only steady commitment makes manifest. All right. We're done. We're done with this. Maybe you did one too. Maybe you did a different quote. Maybe you didn't do a quote at all. Maybe you are still anxious about your lettering. But now just try practicing doing alphabets. Just fill a book of alphabets and try different letters and see how they interact with each other, But also, another thing, as I'm looking at this and I realized, I made like a pretty perfect rectangle out of this without even really intending to. And you can see I did that in part because I just kind of squeezed it in, or I made letters narrower, or you can see I start the line big and then it got smaller. It's sometimes I started small and then I was pretty consistently balanced all the way across. So these are all, I don't like that. These are all partly they come about because I've done this a lot, but also taking your time, not talking on YouTube while you're doing it, they all help. Well, I hope that was fun and inspirational and educational. Feel free to look back at some of the people I mentioned. Maybe I'll put a list of their names down in the description below so you can go and look more into them. Thanks for joining me today. It was really a pleasure to see you again, and I look forward to... Oh, wait, I have a couple of other things to do. I'm sorry, I was rushing out of here. But anyway, thank you for joining me for that portion of the program. Now I wanted to show you changing directions drastically. I wanted to show you our sketchbook of the week. Every week we show you a sketchbook pulled from the archives, a tour of the sketchbook. And this week we're going to look at an artist named Vin Ganapathy, who's a friend of mine who lives in Brooklyn. And if you go to Sketchy, you might be familiar with Vin. If you took our class called People Drawing People or Art Boot Camp, you will know Vin. He is just mind-blowing artist. And let's have a look at his sketchbook, and then I'll see you. Just cleaning the old nib. Yeah, actually two of them. So yes, thanks for joining me. Thanks for, wait, let's talk about Vin Ganapathy for a second. I mean, what is there to say? His drawings are so beautiful. He has such a personal style, and yet he's capturing so many different kinds of people in so many different kinds of ways. He's definitely a person worth studying, and all the different ways in which he draws people and the different tools that he uses, the different ways that he captures detailed. I mean, his drawings, a lot of them are very small, but he is a person who draws an enormous amount. He loves going to Sketchy because he goes and just plows through thousands of pictures that people have uploaded. He goes to life drawing classes, but he draws every day, all the time. He's always filling up sketchbooks. So, Greta, you want to know what pen I would recommend to someone who's never drawn with ink and pen? Well, the pen is part of it. I would recommend this G nib by Zebra. It is a widely available nib. It works great for lettering. It works great for drawing. The G nib. And some India ink. I did a workshop on drawing with a dip pen. I guess you missed it. And I went through all of that stuff. So what is your homework? Your homework is to be you. Be wonderful. Your homework is to just keep drawing. But if you want some homework, here's what I would say. Go and look at other people who do lettering and just copy them. Copy them and internalize the lessons that you learn as you're doing it. You won't be able to copy them exactly, but that's the way it should be because you're going to be copying them as you. And then ultimately you will ignore what you did in the copying, and it will just become part of you. And you will become freer. Because ultimately what you're trying to do is not learn a style or a technique. Because I have to tell you, I've looked at a lot of calligraphers that you see on YouTube and around the internet. They all look the same to me. They do. They've learned certain techniques, they use certain tools, and they all look the same. I'm much more interested in the kinds of people I showed you who look like them. They look like artists expressing their authentic selves. So much more interesting than pretty letters for a wedding invitation. But that's just me. I'm a crank. You might want to do that kind of work, and in which case, by all means. I find that even studying to do that kind of thing kind of laborious and tedious. Instead, that's why I like to just, copy people until you develop confidence. When you develop confidence, the true you will be coming out in your lines. It's really that simple, and it sounds kind of mystical and magical. Maybe it is, but in the end, all the stuff that I talked to you about is about finding out who you are and letting that happen. And getting rid of that voice in your head that's trying to intrude and cover your eyes while you're drawing and fill your ears with nonsense. The fact is, maybe you can't do what I do, but I hope not. You should be doing what you do. And then I can't do what you do either. This is all about being who you are and enjoying that and being proud of it. And trying to get deeper and deeper into discovering what makes you unique as an artist, what makes you unique as a person. You've had a lifetime of experiences. They're all channeled into your handwriting if you let them be. So I hope that this will drive you forward. And you can start by doing quotes. You can start by copying other people. But in time, you will just write like you. And you will write about your life. And the words will come out of you. And it will be a pleasure to see and to share. And that's it. That's where I'm at. Thanks for drawing with me today. We'd love to see what you made. So please post it on social media or put it in the Sketchbook School schoolyard and make sure to tag it #SBS Draw With Me. Thanks very much to our sponsors, Hahnemühle and Winsor and Newton. And if you'd like some more inspiration for your creativity, here are 3 things that you can do. 1, Subscribe to this channel, and you'll know when I make new videos, which I do every week. 2, sign up for my free weekly newsletter. A lot of people seem to like it, maybe because it's free. And 3rd, watch another video.